talking about the game. We're talking about practice, man.
Allen Iverson didn't snap because of practice. He snapped because the people who were supposed to protect him set him up. This is the story the NBA doesn't want you to hear.
You cannot say the name Allen Iverson and not think of practice?
May 7th, 2002, the Philadelphia 76ers called a press conference to clear the air about their franchise player. But when Iverson walked into that room, he wasn't walking into a conversation. He was walking into an ambush. Reporters, armed with their same loaded question, repeated 22 times in 3 minutes, "Why don't you practice?"
You see me play? You see me play, don't you? You see me give everything I got, right? But we're talking about practice right now. We're talking about practice.
What followed became the most misunderstood moment in NBA history.
Practice? Not the game, you talking about practice? All right, I gotta get to practice.
Because the real story wasn't about practice. It was about a grieving superstar, a coach who leaked to the media, and a front office that wanted him gone. Just 1 year earlier, Iverson dragged a team of role players to the NBA Finals.
Bothered by loose. Iverson. Yes.
He played through broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, in a league that labeled him a thug. But behind the scenes, the organization was already plotting his exit. GM Billy King was shopping him in trades. Coach Larry Brown, a man who skipped practices for golf outings in San Antonio, was leaking stories to the press. And on that day in May, they handed reporters the match and watched Iverson burn himself alive. Larry Brown's leaks to the reporters were deliberate, as beat writer John Smallwood later admitted. We all knew he was lit that night. If he'd been sober, he would have never taken the bait. What they edited out of the clip was the crack in his voice when he said, "I lost my best friend." That crack in his voice, it wasn't anger. It was the sound of a man who had buried his brother 6 months earlier and was told to, quote-unquote, act professional. Rahsaan Langeford wasn't just a friend. He was the only one who smuggled food to Iverson's family when they couldn't pay the electric bill in Hampton. The one who slept on the floor next to him after the bowling alley arrest.
But it was on another level. You know, I mean, he was my teammate, he was my friend. And
on October 15th, 2001, 3 weeks before the season started, Langford was shot dead outside of a Richmond nightclub at 2 a.m. The Sixers knew. They saw Iverson vomiting before games from stress. Watched him stare at Langford's jersey, number 3, now tattooed over his heart, during free throws. But when he missed a single practice to arrange the funeral, Larry Brown told the Philadelphia Inquirer, "This is why we'll never win."
And him wanting to be on a championship team, and him wanting to be a leader, and him wanting to be the best player. And I kind of gave him my ideas of how that could be accomplished, and he told me he was going to see that would happen.
The press painted him as a diva. Nobody mentioned the 42 points he dropped on the Celtics 2 days after the murder, or that he played an entire season with Langford's initials sharpied on his sneaker, RL, in crooked letters, like they had done in high school. So when he finally broke at that press conference, when his voice shattered on "I lost him," it wasn't about basketball. It was about a brotherhood the league refused to respect. And the moment they took his grief and turned it into a meme.
What it was we were out somewhere on a summer, and we were all out having a good time. And we had a little bit too many. We had a little bit too many
waters.
And he asked me, he said, how do you keep your body in so good of a shape and don't get hurt and stay always on the court? And I just told him for real. My coach, George Karl, didn't let me practice. So that was it. I said, you have to stop practicing.
They played that clip so many times, it stopped being words. It became a weapon. Within 18 months, the Sixers traded Iverson to Denver for Andre Miller, Joe Smith, and 2 first-round picks that became nothing. Role players for a team that wouldn't make the playoffs again for 6 years. Meanwhile, Larry Brown, the man who called Iverson uncoachable for missing voluntary workouts, got a $5 million raise. The same year he left Philly, Brown skipped mandatory Pistons practices to play golf. When reporters asked why, they shrugged. Veterans. Iverson got crucified for wearing cornrows. LeBron got called revolutionary for the same hairstyle 5 years later. Iverson got called selfish for practicing late. Kobe got praised as driven for showing up at 4 a.m. Even the culture Iverson supposedly poisoned, the Sixers tanked for a decade after trading him. The Pistons fired Brown 2 years after his extension, but the narrative stuck. Because it was never about basketball. It was about a league terrified of a black man who wouldn't conform. They broke him, not on the court where he left everything, but in the court of public opinion, where rules changed depending on where you were, and where practice wasn't a question, it was a verdict. This is the moment they never showed you. Watch his face. That's not defiance. That's a man who's realizing he's walking into a trap.
The MVP, the best basketball player in the world. And when I lose, this is what I gotta go through?
Over the next 8 minutes, reporters ask about practice 22 times. 22 times, Iverson tries to talk about loyalty, about loss, about how his best friend's blood was still on the sneakers from the funeral. And 22 times, they drag him back to their script. They edited out the tears. They cut the context. What ESPN sold as a rant was a grieving man being gaslit on live television. In the NBA, they made millions off the highlight, while quietly settling a lawsuit with the Players Association over the practice rules the very next season. That's the real Allen Iverson. Not the meme, not the villain, a man who gave his body to this league and watched them auction off his pain. This isn't ancient history, it's the blueprint. They did it to Allen Iverson. They did it to Colin Kaepernick. They'll do it to the next brother who won't play their game. So share this video, tag that friend who still quotes the meme, and the next time you see a player snap at a reporter, ask yourself, what part of the story are they cutting out this time?